Welcome to Why Marketing Isn't Magic, where we're delving into the strategy and intention behind marketing and communications efforts and dispelling the myths that marketing is easy. You can just do it last minute, and it just hocus pocus, we wave a wand and it happens. So in this episode, we're talking about branding. And today my guest is Kate Gensler from Kate Kirkpatrick.
I mean, I've been there long enough, maybe.
I know, right? Kate Kirkpatrick from Gensler. I mean, you have been there a long time.
I have. I just hit 28 years.
Woo! I just hit 20, so you got 8 on me.
I know.
All right. We are old pros. We're not old pros. We are seasoned professionals.
Very
That's what
experienced.
we are. So welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
All right. Tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, Gensler, all the things.
Sure. So Gensler is a design firm.
Okay.
So we design places, brands, buildings, interiors, lots of different things. And my world is brand and strategy. And so I work with clients like The Bid, largely place-based brands, destination, wherever, or even private development, helping them develop their brand strategy, and from there, their marketing outreach, audience engagement, and all that sort of thing.
Okay. And you work with lots of other bigger brands and organizations than us. It spans the gamut, right?
Among the place brand, I mean, you are certainly one of the bigger destination management place brands, but yeah, it's a pretty wide scale. Yeah.
Yeah. Kate, tell me why you think people have this misconception about marketing that, just go do it. It's some sort of hocus pocus. And there really, I think, is this lack of respect that this is a discipline. Why do you think that is?
So many reasons, and you can probably start to slice and dice them by industry types. So if I look at the world that our firm lives in, professional services, most of them are working in what they call a seller-doer model. And so they say, hey, partners, senior people, go build business. And they may be good at it, they may not be good at it. But then you look at big consumer brands and they have big budgets. And so people assume, well, you just throw money at it. Or you look at, different or smaller organizations that, social media. We're just going to throw everything on social media. So, I think a lot of the misconceptions are that people are starting with the tactical and not that higher level strategic, which is brand, right? So, and that's what I'm a big believer in, is that you have to get your brand right before you can have successful marketing.
Let's break down what branding a brand is. I feel like people have lots of thoughts and ideas about what it is, and I just want to crystallize that for a second. So for you, you're talking to someone, let's assume they don't know anything. A brand and branding is what?
I don't know if you remember, I'm sure you do, but the What Is brand that we did when we kicked off our work together, right? Because we don't assume that of the 50 people in the room that are there to do workshops that they know what it is. And so we have, here is a product or a thing that is a thing. Here is their logo, which is also a thing associated with the product. But a brand it's a feeling. It's, you can call it many different things. Some people think of it as values. Some people think of it as positioning. I like to think of it as the North Star. Brands need room. It's not about like you can only be this. You need room. You need flexibility. But the brand has to track to something that is true, that is distinctive, that is flexible, but it is not something that should be changing all the time. Again, going back to that basic question of marketing campaigns, taglines, promotions, PR strategies, those can and should change. They need to be guided by that brand. And so when you ask the question of, what do people just not understand, I would probably, the too long did not read answer is too many people think brand is just a logo. Or a marketing campaign. And so it is a strategic business organizational asset.
I love it. So if you didn't catch that, a brand is not just your logo. That is one part of an entire family, I guess if you will, that creates this brand. And I like to say, and other people who are in the marketing world know, a brand is a living, breathing thing. And it's one of the things we distill is, what is the promise? What is the promise that when people see Coca-Cola, Apple, whatever, that they know that they're going to get? And I love the example that you all gave us, and when we were developing our brand and having our workshops. I love the Harley Davidson one. So walk us through that really quickly.
Sure. So Harley Davidson, iconic American company. They make motorcycles, very loud motorcycles, right? Beautiful, beautiful machines. Great. So that's a motorcycle. But then you think of that very distinctive. If I asked you to picture the Harley Davidson logo, a lot of people probably can. You know, it's got that black and orange, that kind of shield sort of sense. You know, again, classic, but that's their logo.
Right.
But what is the Harley Davidson brand? What is it? Do you remember the picture that we showed?
I remember the picture. It's somebody on a bike. It's the back of a person on a bike. And I believe that the brand is Adventure Freedom. I don't know. Did I get that right?
You got it totally right? It's freedom. It's the wind in your hair and the sunshine and seeing the scenery, getting away. You know, Harley Davidson in some corners has a rebellious type of it. You know, that's a little bit part of it, right? And you know, but people can really find themselves, right? What freedom means to me and what it means to you and what it means to someone down the street might be a little different, but we find our own freedom in being part of the Harley Davidson world.
And I think that's a classic example of no one's going to buy a Harley Davidson because of the logo. They're going because of the feeling. They're going for what the brand represents. And so the brand is beyond the logo. It's like, I feel like it's a little bit like the creator makes the logo, but it's not about that. That's an identity. It's part of the visual identity, but not why people go to buy. People don't go buy an Apple phone for the Apple logo. And almost make them thinking about that. But it is for the, as my kids would say, we want the bubble. We want the bubble when we're texting. It needs to be blue and not orange, you know, and all those things that it represents. And I think that's something that gets missed so often by not just big companies, by smaller companies, by small businesses. And it becomes an afterthought because, you know, a small business owner says, it's just me. I'm doing it all. I'm running the business. I'm selling the product. I'm going to get clients. I don't have time to think about branding. Tell me why that is an incorrect statement or maybe a risky and a dangerous statement.
Because, and I can't take credit for the thought, there are a lot of reasons why people buy something. Again, buy might mean you pay money for a product, or it might mean I come to downtown to an event or to a place. But people are buying things that speak to them in some way. There has to be a basic functional, well, and you talked about promise, right? So promise says, what are you going to get? You know, and as a brand, you are making a promise. You know, you're going to get this, it's going to do this for you. And here's that feeling, right? So I'm going to get a great motorcycle, but it's going to make me feel like really, really cool. So, you know, so I think in many cases, a sole proprietor, a single person brand is the brand, right? Sometimes it's someone's passion. I got a pair of mittens. I've started buying things off TikTok. You're going to be really proud of me. I got somebody a pair of mittens that I saw through a TikTok post that was a young woman who salvages sweaters and makes them into these super cute little mittens. But it was her passion and her, you know, that she believes in, you know, I'm recycling something, I'm making something that's fun, it's got a lot of personality, it's handmade, it's a small business. So all of these things, you know, I could just go sell mittens, but she's selling a story. And the post that won me over was her, you know, piecing them together, washing the sweaters and hanging them up on a line at her cabin up in upstate New York, right? So it's very charming, it's very real, and it feels personal. So, you know, can something feel personal once it scales? You know, that could be a whole other episode.
Yes.
But I think the reality is every organization, company, one person, thousands, whatever, you have a brand.
Yeah.
You have one. whether you like it or not, whether you came up with it or not, or whether you're managing it or not. You tend to see people managing as they scale up, but you are either helping define it or other people will define it for you. Now, you can define it, but you still can't completely control how people think of it. And that's where the discipline and the logo and expression toolkit comes in to tell people that story. But you have to listen, and you have to listen to what people are saying and thinking. That's where I think brand creation can be harder for a smaller organization because some people are genius at it and they're just, born to do it. But I think most people need an outside voice to say, well, this is what I heard. Or did you hear these amazing things that people are saying and you're not picking up on them just because they seem everyday, typical to you. So, even if you don't have a big budget or big scale, you can still find a way, I think, to get an outside voice to listen to you tell your story and say, what do I get out of it? So there's so many, there's so many different tools that you can do things with now in terms of digital feedback and that kind of thing. But one thing, when you were asking a couple seconds ago about the Harley example again, so I had the chance I went to a concert in Milwaukee last summer, and I went to the Harley Davidson Museum. And it was really interesting because they've been around for 150 plus years. And when you look at where they first started, it was pretty functional, right? It was, get from point A to point B. They really gained traction in World War II because they were providing motorcycles to the U.S. government in the war. And the company, over time, advertising really was the first advent of selling stuff, right? Here's the thing, here's how much it costs. And it was very interesting as a person who does what we do to walk through that museum and see the evolution of the brand from, it's sturdy, it helped us win the war, to this notion of post-war, there was a lot of notions of people expanding, right? People growing homes, growing families. So they kind of tracked with this really interesting American history. But I think that's where over time, people are much more savvy about brands and about marketing. And so
especially now,
they know when they're just being sold to.
I think at its highest level, far up from the trees, a brand is a story. It's your story, the story of your organization, your product, your service, whatever. I want to talk a little bit about how is branding different for a product or service versus a place?
Yes. Again, I believe you cannot control everything. I see products having I'm not going to say easier. You can never say easier. Just a different dynamic in terms of what they are able to control, as opposed to a place. So if we look at downtown or any of the other kind of place brand organizations in the United States or around the world, you can control what you say, and you can control the programming that you do and all sorts of that, but what people think of it and how they experience it is just a very, very different thing, right? So if you have an event and it rains, maybe it makes it amazing, and you're thinking, oh, it rained. Maybe it's actually really positive because people feel like they have come and done something, that was kind of different and unexpected. But you cannot control the weather. You can't control what your property owners do or do not do. You can't control if they decide to always lease their street level retail to not super activated tenants, right? They have a job to do and they have a business to run.
Right.
So there's just so many different types of factors that you have to just sort of set aside and say, here's what I can promise, here's how I can execute, and here's why it is aligned to my story.
And it's so important that each that the place, and of course products and services too, are telling the story because of all those other factors. Like we can't control what's on the news. We can't control what's being said
Right.
because people take that as the gospel oftentimes and like, oh, well, I'm going to go or not going to go here, but you need all these other tools. I want to ask you where you think people go wrong with branding, because I feel like you can zoom out, you can zoom in, and quite frankly, we were a little scared. We had been wanting to do this for a while. When we broached it, spending a lot of money, and even if you're spending a little bit of money, it's your money. And so there is this sense of, what am I going to get? What is this process going to yield? And so talk about the branding process. And I know it's different for every organization, but there are some sort of standard things. And where do you think people miss the mark?
You know, we start with, you know, it's not a cookie cutter process, but there's a framework.
Yes.
We're trying to build understanding, and we want to understand context. So, you know, downtown DC bid, very well established. Lots of different things in the past. A newer bid might not have that history. Totally different area of town that maybe is, you know, redeveloping, right? As opposed to somewhere that's very established, right? So there's two very different situations. But what we're trying to get is a sense from the people who are the owners, so to speak, of the place brand, or the decision makers, because I think you do have to think of, you are a publicly owned brand in a sense. But I want to get at where people see, you know, the positives, the negatives in very real terms, but also the aspirations, because you think you always have to be setting your sights for something positive in the future. But I think you have to be really realistic of, you know, do people just think that there isn't anything to do there, so to speak? You know, that's one thing. Well, I don't know what's going on there. Or are you trying to undo, you know, negative perceptions, again, that might have happened because things out of your control, but you still have to deal with them. But we just like to ask lots and lots of questions, you know, and take the lens that people answer through. We take that into consideration, right? What does this person care about? Are they an employer? And so they're thinking about it this way. Are they a retail business? And so they're thinking about it another way, on and on. So we call that discovery. And from our discovery, we come up with what we call brand leads. And these are possibilities. You know, it could be 2 or 3 paths that say, well, it sounds like your story might be this and a little bit of this. Or it could be, you know, polar opposite. You know, kind of go across the spectrum. And we just go through a process of testing those and saying, if this were true, if path A or path B is your story, what would you not do that you do now? And that's actually one of the hardest questions we ever ask anyone, because I know that, you know, downtown partnerships, bids, just constant, we need to do more of this. We need to do more of that. This needs to be bigger. Of course, you know, so from, you know, through this process of iterating our leads, and as you know, you go through several rounds of iteration, and you get to articulating what that platform is, that promise, that personality, you know, kind of that core essence. But one of the things that I think people get wrong, and it's not because place brands should not be for everyone or inclusive in many different ways. But if you do not define who you are for, what is the person who is going to really, really connect with our story? We are working for them. And there are lots of other people who are going to, you know, kind of be attracted to that. So a lot of people will say, well, we're for families. Great. How many different kinds of families are there in the world? Right. And, you know, or we're for, you know, younger people or older people, you know, those are just situational demographics, right? I can't help when I was born or where, or, you know, all that. But I have interests, and I have lifestyle choices. If I came across $500, I would spend that on live music or sports. You might spend that on going on a great beach vacation, right? So it's about understanding what are the mindsets and preferences of the people that you believe are going to really connect with your story. And again, you can spend lots and lots and lots of, and this is probably where, back to the small company budget, people feel like, well, I don't have time. Maybe if nothing else,
Okay.
think about your person and what they are about, and who whose mind and attitude you believe you're for. And I think if you do that, you can probably build a lot of the other stuff through time. But if you do not define that who, a brand that is for everybody
is for nobody.
A brand that is for nobody.
Right. And I think people are afraid to say this is who we're for because they feel like they're being exclusive by not including everyone, but you can't. I want to talk a quick second about what you said. So if a person can't hire a Gensler or can't hire a firm at all, how would they figure out their person? Because the other thing that I think is important about branding overall and marketing is it's not for you. It's not like the Downtown DC bid brand was not for us in the marketing team.
Right.
We had to step back and say, who is our person? And come to really sit with that for a second. It's not who we want it to be. And there could be an aspiration. It's not for us. So how does a small company, a small bid where they're a team of two, of one, a small business begin to figure out who am I for?
Yeah. I think you can study your competitive landscape and say, okay, if there's a destination, so let's just say it's a small city, and maybe there's only one downtown partnership, right?
Okay.
So you don't have a lot. It's not like, how many bids are there here? 12, 15,
13.
Regionally, and regionally, right? There's a handful of others. So you can really look and say, okay, what is this one? What do they say about themselves? What do they say about themselves? How do I compare to that, fit into that? What have I been saying that's different, special, distinctive, true or not? So I think taking a look at whatever environment you have and trying to understand it and challenging yourself to not just define it as demographics, but mindsets. You have to go with what you're able to get your hands on.
Yeah.
And honestly, a lot of people these days are probably going to feed it into AI.
I
know. I mean, see what you get. You can't ignore that it does give you an interesting, different reach, I think, than I believe that having a smart outside person, as a balance. Hopefully any business owner or bid at least has a friend. If they can't hire a consultant, at least they maybe have a friend or, somebody who isn't in the market. Well, what do you know about our place? What do you think about it? So you might just have to continue. I feel like a lot of the smaller organizations, they're super scrappy and DIY to begin with.
So true.
So I think it's a very sharp tool that they already put to good use.
So true.
So it's about asking the right questions.
Okay.
Not necessarily having, a consultant bench that can help you, that can ask those questions for you.
So you brought up AI. Let's talk for a quick second about how has AI changed the landscape as far as branding?
It's very interesting. I think the value of AI, I'll speak for our brand team. I think the value of it for us is almost using it as a way to test.
Okay.
I was working with someone recently where we were coming up with names, and search has always been a good way to find, can I own, is this name different? Is it ownable? Is it, all those things. And AI can take it a little bit farther maybe than just plain search. Search has AI in it now anyway. So,
True.
So I think for us, it is a tool that we use to try to make ourselves smarter. You know, does it come up with something that we had already thought about, or does it come up with something that maybe is a weird angle that we hadn't come up with? But at the end of the day, AI is only drawing on what is known.
Exactly.
At this moment. Now, yes, obviously it has a big reach. So it knows more than I do, I suppose.
And can't replace people. Like it can't replace that feedback.
I think there's a way to, you know, again, if it's a complete resource gap for you, fine, you know, then maybe it's helpful. But I feel like having real people look at your ideas, challenge them, you know, tell you what you're missing, help you with that list of what would you do and what, you know, if this was your story, what would you do, what would you not do? Have people help you with those exercises, because I think you just never know where you're going to find something really remarkable.
I agree.
So
I also think that the expertise, like AI can't, there's no way that AI can give your 28 years of experience, nor compile the team and understanding the information that you are getting in discovery and seeing it in a way, and also comparing, saying like that was hugely helpful, looking at Harley Davidson, looking at Apple, looking at Whole Foods, seeing that Whole Foods is a teacher, you know, it's educational. I think I got that one right. But you need these sort of light bulb epiphany moments to be able to compare, to think, to reflect, and then to say, well, where do you fit in? And I don't think AI could ever do that. Okay, so we're gonna pivot for a second. It's time to do our taste test. So we're gonna taste test, and then we're gonna have you pitch pitch the drink.
Okay. Fantastic.
Okay. Would you like to know the ingredients before you? Okay, so this is a little bit of clementines, agave, and orange sparkling water. That is your natural Fanta orange right there, or orange soda.
Cheers to downtown.
What do you think?
I would not have expected it to taste this way.
Right?
It tastes actually like oranges.
Right, it's crazy, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, I think of orange soda and I think of the stuff I had at camp.
Right. Okay, so now, as I turn the glass with the logo on it, you got to pick your audience before you do your pitch.
Oh, okay. A person who looks for unique experiences on a budget.
Okay. How are you going to pitch this? Okay.
Okay. How much does it cost?
Oh, good question. So let's just say this is between $1.75 and $2.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Do you want me just to tell you how I would pitch it, or I am like literally
pitch it?
All right,
Do
so
it.
you're my person.
Yes,
you're
I'm
my
your person.
All right. So Ebony is my person who's looking for unique experiences on a budget. So Ebony, I know how much you love to have tastes that you've not had before, things that surprise you a little bit. And I think that we have something for you that's going to surprise you, because it's an orange soda, and you're going to think, this is the stuff that I used to have at summer camp, and it tastes fake, and it's fizzy, and it's way too sweet. But this is for the person who really wants something. This is really hard to do. I usually actually I get to think about things.
You're doing fine. But you know what?
I'd be terrible on a reality show.
No, but I think, you know what you said is so key, because that's the whole point, is that you got to think about it. You don't just sit down and throw it together. Like, we're doing this test, you know, for the camera, for this video series. But the whole point of the marketing is to sit down and think about it and be strategic.
I'm not sure I would make a story out of
About
the
the budget?
budget, right?
Okay.
That's like a pricing exercise.
True.
You know?
True.
I mean, it would almost be you know, and you wouldn't be saying, you know, you're the person who, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be opaque to the listener, right? So the story that I need to tell is, and maybe you do it first person, right? When I used to go to summer camp and that sticky, sweet, fake orange taste, it makes me think of, sunburns and bee stings, right? But I'm all grown up now. And what I want is something that actually tastes like oranges, and I can just see the clementines, floating around my head.
Okay. And, so this is a fun way to do it, but it's really a backwards way of doing it because especially if we're taking this like a natural version of a soda, it already has its own audience of people who want natural versus synthetic versus all the other ingredients.
Oh, but I thought so when I was like, oh, great, this will be I thought, and you said it, right? All these crazy prebiotic sodas, they're super expensive, but also I'm like, maybe I really just want a soda and it doesn't have to be good for me.
Exactly.
It's a little bit better than, it's not as great as the probiotic, but it's not, a full sugary soda.
And I think people who want something like this are willing to pay a little bit more anyway because they want something more natural.
Like quality.
Right, exactly. This doesn't have probiotics in it. Share with us, how can people find you? How can people find Gensler? And do you have any upcoming projects or do you want to say anything about Gensler that people don't know or whatever you want to share?
Sure.
The floor is yours.
Okay. Great. Well, I think a lot of people, we are a very large, well-known firm, no question. But there are a lot of practices we have that, our brand practice is actually one of the larger ones in the world. But compared to the other pieces of our design business, it's kind of, we're sort of a boutique within the firm. But we work with, as I said, cities, destination organizations, private development, around defining, activating, building place brands. So you can certainly find us on the web, Gensler.com. Okay. My bio is in there. Okay. Here in Washington, you can find our DC office, and I'm also, of course, on LinkedIn.
Okay, we'll put your LinkedIn information up. Kate, if you could say one thing to people, whether you want them to know, like this is your chance, something people just don't know about branding, the work you do, what would you say? Like, what do you want to tell them about marketing and about branding?
Don't underestimate the commitment. It is a strategic brand. A brand is a strategic business asset, and you would not treat your P&L as a side gig. You would not treat your hiring and talent development or your actual product or service development and delivery. You don't treat any of those things as a side dish. You treat them strategically. So brand, if neglected, is not as strong an asset as it can be and should be for you. So that doesn't necessarily, I don't think commitment means big budget. It does mean discipline.
Yes.
And thoughtfulness.
Okay.
And so that, I think that's something important for people to think about.
For sure. Don't treat your brand like a cheap floozy, people. Don't do it. Well, Kate, this has been so good. And I have to say, I wasn't even aware of all the things you all did when we started working with you. And you all have been such a strategic partner for us. And the coming together, the symmetry of everything from the brand to the state of downtown to, even things like in the office, the interior design. And I love the thoughtfulness and intention behind everything. So thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us today.
This is really fun. I can't wait to see everybody's stories.
Yes, for sure. All right. So that's a wrap for today's episode on why marketing isn't magic. See you next time.